This is every major tank of the Second World War, ranked from absolute worst to undisputed best, starting with the worst tanks. Number 10. Italian M11, 39, Italy. Italy entered the war with a tank that looked like it was designed by someone who had never actually seen a tank fight. The M11/39 mounted its main 37mm gun in the hull, fixed, meaning the entire vehicle had to pivot just to aim. The turret, meanwhile, only carried machine guns. The thinking was backwards from the start. In the Western Desert, British Matildas and Crusaders brushed aside M11/39s like they were obstacles, not opponents. Crews had almost no protection against even medium caliber fire, and the engine was chronically unreliable in the North African heat. It wasn't a tank, it was a metal coffin pointed in the wrong direction. Number 9. French Char B1, France. On paper, the Char B1 looked formidable. Heavy armor, a 75mm hull gun, a 47mm turret cannon, numbers that should have terrified German commanders. In practice, it was a nightmare to operate. The driver also controlled the hull gun, meaning one man was steering, shifting gears, and aiming simultaneously. The radio operator position was practically useless under fire. Fuel consumption was catastrophic, barely 100 kilometers on a full tank, and if a Char B1 broke down, which it often did, the crew had no way to destroy it quickly before the Germans captured it and studied it. The Germans, ironically, were so impressed by the ones they captured intact that they pressed many into their own service. A tank so difficult to use that the enemy got more value out of it than the army it was built for. Number 8. Soviet T-60, USSR. The Soviets built the T-60 out of desperation, not design philosophy. In late 1941, with German forces closing on Moscow and factory production in chaos, the Red Army needed numbers. The T-60 was cheap, fast to build, and could be produced at automotive plants already running. It carried only a 20mm cannon, completely ineffective against any German armor beyond light reconnaissance vehicles. Soviet tankers called it the BM-2. The letters stood for Bratsk, Kaya, Mogala, Delai, Dvoik, a mass grave for two. That was the crew complement. 2 men, 0 realistic chance of survival against a Panzer III or IV. It existed not to fight tanks, but to buy time while the Soviet industrial machine relocated east and retooled. As a stopgap, it served its grim purpose. As a weapon, it was a sentence. Number 7. British Matilda, UK. The Matilda was a pre-war concept, still breathing in a war. It was never designed to fight. It carried a single machine gun, no main cannon, no anti-armor capability whatsoever. It was conceived as an infantry support vehicle to crawl alongside foot soldiers at walking pace and suppress enemy riflemen. When France fell in 1940, Matildas were abandoned on the beaches of Dunkirk by the hundreds. They couldn't retreat fast enough and couldn't fight effectively enough to hold position. Against the Panzer II, the Matilda was merely inconvenient. Against the Panzer III, it was a target. Number 6. Japanese Type 94 tankette, Japan. The Japanese Type 94 wasn't really a tank, it was a tankette, a miniaturized armored vehicle that looked more like an oversized toy than a weapon of war. 2-man crew, machine guns only, armor so thin that American rifle fire at close range could sometimes penetrate it. Against Chinese forces in the 1930s, the Type 94 performed adequately. The opposition simply wasn't equipped to destroy it. But once Japan entered a war against industrialized opponents with real anti-tank capabilities, the Type 94 was obsolete before it crossed the beach. American Marines in the Pacific watched them burn from light field guns, bazookas, and even heavy machine guns, a weapon that revealed its limitations the moment it faced a serious enemy. Number 5. German Panzer Kampfwagen, I, Germany. The irony of the Panzer I is that it built the reputation of the Wehrmacht armored divisions, and then became the machine most likely to get their crews killed. It was a training tank, 2 machine guns, 13mm of armor at its thickest. No business being in combat against anything with a cannon. During the Spanish Civil War, it worked because the opposition was equally underpowered. By 1940, however, Panzer Is were rolling into France alongside Panzer IIIs and IVs, and the gap in capability was devastating. German tank commanders knew it. They used them anyway because they needed the numbers. In Poland and France, Panzer I Fru survived largely on speed and luck. Number 4. American M3 Stuart Honey, USA. Wait, the Stuart? Beloved by so many? Yes, because context is everything. The M3 Stuart was a good light tank for its role in 1941. Fast, reliable, mechanically sound. British crews in North Africa actually liked it so much, they nicknamed it Honey. But light tanks don't belong in head-to-head fights with German medium armor, and the Stuart was constantly thrown into exactly that situation. A 37mm cannon against a Panzer IV, against a Tiger, against a Panther. The shell shell simply didn't have the penetrating power to matter. Stuarts survived in reconnaissance and exploitation roles. They were never meant to slug it out. The ones that suffered were the ones commanders threw at problems they couldn't solve. A fine vehicle destroyed by misuse. And that misuse earned it enough casualties to rank near the bottom of this list. Number 3. Soviet KV-2, USSR. The KV-2 was terrifying. It was also nearly useless. 152mm howitzer mounted in an enormous, boxy turret on the already heavy KV chassis. It could blow a building apart. It could wreck a German tank with a single shell, if the shell ever actually landed where intended. The problem was everything else. The turret took almost a full minute to traverse manually. On any slope, it couldn't rotate at all. The weight made it mechanically dangerous to try. The tank was so heavy, it broke bridges, bogged in soft ground, and stressed its transmission into failure on long road marches. German tank crews who encountered KV-2s in 1941 didn't defeat them in gunfights. They drove around them, cut off their supply lines, and waited. A 57-ton machine that the enemy had learned to simply ignore. Number 2. Italian CV-33 Tankette, Italy. If the M11/39 was Italy's most embarrassing tank, the CV-33 might be its most tragic. Used extensively in Abyssinia, Spain, and Albania, it looked effective in those colonial-era conflicts. 2 machine guns, speed, small profile. Ethiopia had spears. When the CV-33 met modern anti-tank weapons, or even a heavy machine gun on a tripod, the armor, barely 14mm at maximum, didn't slow the rounds down noticeably. In Greece, in North Africa, and East Africa, CV-33 crews died in vehicles that had been obsolete before the war even began. Italy sent thousands of men into battle, in machines that their own engineers knew couldn't protect them. That is not just a tactical failure, that is something darker. Number 1. French FCM-36, France. The FCM-36 earns the bottom position, not just for its mediocrity, but for what it represents. A diesel-powered infantry tank, well-armored for 1936, it was also undergunned, carrying only a 37mm cannon, and produced in such small numbers that it barely made a dent in French armored doctrine. Only 100 were ever built. When Germany invaded France in May 1940, those 100 FCM-36 were scattered across different units, with no coordinated strategy, no doctrine for offensive armored action, and no command structure capable of using them effectively. Even if the tank had been excellent, the FCM-36 didn't fail purely because of its design. It failed because of everything built around it, or rather, everything that wasn't. It is the most complete picture of failure on this list. Not just a bad tank, a symbol of a nation that lost a war before the first shot was fired.